Have you ever experienced something so strange, so impossible that you knew it was real, but you also knew deep down that telling a single soul would make you sound completely insane? Well, in this explainer, that's exactly where we're going. We're exploring that terrifying space, that thin line between a truth no one can prove and the madness everyone can see.
Okay, let's just dive right in with this quote from our source material, the fiction collection, Impossible Truths. And wow, this one line really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It suggests that our whole sense of self, our memories, everything we think of as reality, well, it's all built on this incredibly fragile foundation. A foundation that could just crack at any moment. And these stories, they're about what happens when it does.
So the big idea we're digging into here is what's called the unprovable truth. It's that unique kind of loneliness that comes from carrying an experience that you simply cannot verify to anyone else.
And this defines it perfectly. See, an impossible truth isn't just a secret you're keeping. It's a burden. The very act of trying to share it, of trying to find some connection over it, is the thing that pushes people away. It leaves you totally and completely alone with your version of reality.
So that brings us to the crucial question, right? What really happens when your world just breaks apart and you can't get anyone to see the pieces the same way you do? This question is the perfect launchpad for our first case study, which is a really unsettling look into a fractured mind.
In this first story, which is called Yunus, it's not actually the world that breaks, but the self. We're going to be looking at a man whose entire sense of who he is just starts to dissolve, leaving this empty space that he becomes desperate, absolutely desperate to fill.
All right, so we're introduced to this character who, in the fog of his crumbling memory, he just grabs onto a name, an identity. Yunus Osman, and he believes this with every fiber of his being. To him, it feels completely, 100% true.
But, as you can probably guess, there's a pretty significant, undeniable problem with his newfound truth.
Yep, the real Yunus Osman was very much alive, with a family, a home, a whole life. But our narrator, he doesn't see a man to stay away from. No, he sees an imposter, someone living the life that he believes is rightfully his. His mind is like an empty house, and he's just found the one he wants to move into. And this lays out his descent into madness, and it's so methodical. First, he just watches the real Yunus and his family, learning their routines. Then he starts secretly entering their home when they're gone, kind of trying on the life like it's a new coat. He convinces himself he is the father, Julia's father. And then we get to the most terrifying part. In his shattered mind, the final step doesn't feel like murder. It feels like an eviction. He's just removing a squatter from what he truly believes is his home. And it all comes to a head right here in this climax. You've got two men standing in the same kitchen, but they are living in two completely separate, irreconcilable realities. For our narrator, he's just a man defending his home from a trespasser. For the real Yunus, a stranger with a knife has just appeared in his kitchen. There's no way for either of them to prove their reality to the other, and only one of them is going to walk out of that room. Okay, so that was a case of a fractured mind. Now let's switch gears and look at a different kind of break. In our next case study, from a story called When Time Slips, it's not one person's mind that breaks, it's the whole world. The very rules of time and space bend, leaving a young boy with a truth that nobody could possibly accept. I mean, the premise sounds so simple, but it's just so impossible. A boy named Anir is running from some trouble. He leaps over a wall in the year 1979 and lands in the exact same spot, but in 1949. Suddenly, the abandoned casino is bustling with life. The cars look ancient. His entire world has just been rewritten. And you can really see the whole tragedy laid out here. The journey starts with something so small and mundane, a broken car window in 1979. That leads to this impossible event, the trip back to 1949. But the real tragedy isn't the time travel. It's what happens after, when he returns to 1979 and this unprovable truth absolutely shatters his family. Decades later, as an old man, this is the devastating conclusion he shares with his grandson. When you're carrying an impossible truth, what do you even do? If you tell people, you risk being called crazy. If you stay quiet, the secret just eats you alive from the inside out. There's just no winning move. There are only different kinds of loss. And we see that different damage play out so clearly here. The boy, Anir, he eventually finds out that his own grandfather, Moise, was the man who helped him way back in 1949. Moise told people about meeting a boy from the future, and he died alone, an outcast, a lunatic. Anir's mother lived her whole life with the guilt of never believing her own father. And his friend Joseph, who also experienced the time slip, was so traumatized by the disbelief he faced that he chose silence instead, and it completely destroyed him.
So, what connects these two wildly different stories? One's about a fractured mind, the other is about a fractured timeline. It all comes down to one single, incredibly powerful element. It's not about what's actually real. It's about what we can get other people to believe is real. And this brings us right back to the central idea from the book's introduction. The line between being seen as sane and being seen as insane, it might have nothing to do with a medical diagnosis. It might just be about finding one person, just one, who's willing to stand there with you in your impossible reality and say, I can't prove this is true, but I believe you.
I mean, let that sink in for a second. This really boils the whole thing down to its core. What we call sanity could just be a social agreement. It's a consensus. If enough of us agree that the sky is blue, then it's blue. But what if you're the only person in the world who sees it as green? Who's the one that's truly wrong?
And really, that's the question we're left with. Knowing the risk, the isolation, the disbelief, the label of madness, would you share your impossible truth? Or would you choose the different, quieter damage of silence? It's a choice that defines that thin, fragile line that maybe all of us are walking on.